The morning sun rose over the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, casting a brilliant golden glow upon the pristine white sands of Fantasy Island. The palm trees swayed gently in the warm tropical breeze, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of exotic flowers. On the grand veranda of the main house, Mr. Rourke stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking out at the arriving guests with a serene expression. Beside him stood his loyal assistant, Lawrence, who was adjusting his immaculate white suit and looking up at the sky with an eager smile. Mr. Rourke looked at Lawrence and smiled warmly, telling him to make sure everyone was smiling. It was a beautiful day, a day where dreams were meant to come true. Lawrence nodded enthusiastically, noting the arrival of Miss Wendy Collins. He remarked to Mr. Rourke that she was the famous model, a household name known for her breathtaking beauty. Mr. Rourke agreed with Lawrence, but noted with a touch of sadness that her immense beauty was unfortunately no defense against paradox. He explained that while Miss Collins might appear to be the love god's gift to man, the painful fact was that an emotional problem had left her frigid. Lawrence sighed, calling it an incalculable waste. Mr. Rourke added that no one was more painfully aware of that reality than Miss Collins herself. That was the exact reason why her fantasy was to know love and its passions without guilt or inhibitions. As they watched the next group of guests step off the boat, Lawrence noticed a man with a confident stride. He asked Mr. Rourke about Arthur Crane, recognizing him immediately as one of the Space Shuttle astronauts and a true national hero. Mr. Rourke, however, corrected him with a gentle shake of his head, revealing that the man was actually a plumbing salesman. Lawrence was shocked, asking what he meant. Mr. Rourke explained that Arthur was only posing as an astronaut, which was one of the many roles he compulsively assumed. He was a professional fraud, yet he was incredibly convincing. That was the core of the problem. The young lady accompanying him was his fiancée, Miss Joanne Fields, and if Mr. Crane persisted in his endless masquerades, it could prove to be utterly disastrous for their relationship. Lawrence inquired about his fantasy, and Mr. Rourke shared that Mr. Crane's fantasy was to be freed forever of his compulsion to be the great imposter. The final choice, however, would be his alone, a true matter of kill or cure. The guests gathered in the beautifully decorated courtyard, looking around in awe at the paradise that surrounded them. Mr. Rourke stepped forward, raising his arms in a welcoming gesture. He addressed his dear guests, introducing himself as Mr. Rourke, their host, and formally welcomed them all to Fantasy Island. A short while later, Wendy Collins walked along one of the scenic garden paths, her mind heavy with thought. She looked at the lush greenery but could not fully appreciate it. She sighed and muttered to herself, wishing she could understand some of the dumb things she had been doing lately. She questioned why she had come all this way just to straighten out her love life, especially when it was not as if she lacked admirers. In fact, she had all kinds of guys hitting on her constantly. Lawrence, who was walking nearby to assist her, looked slightly alarmed and asked if men were truly hitting her. Wendy let out a soft laugh, explaining to Lawrence that hitting on someone was simply a slang term for a display of romantic or sexual interest. She sighed again, admitting that holding on to any of those guys was the real problem. Mr. Rourke joined them on the path, nodding understandingly. He remarked that Miss Collins had never been very interested in permanent relationships until a man named Jeff Barkley came into her life. Wendy stopped walking, her eyes reflecting a deep vulnerability. She admitted that when Jeff entered her life, she completely panicked. She said all kinds of lousy things to him and ultimately drove him away. She looked down, thanking Lawrence as he offered a comforting gesture. Mr. Rourke recalled their first conversation, mentioning that she had brought up the subject of psychiatry. Wendy laughed bitterly, stating that there were shrinks out there sailing luxury yachts that were completely paid for by her frequent office visits. Mr. Rourke gently reminded her that if the past is prologue, then airing all wounds might help them better understand the present problem. Wendy looked at him intensely, stating there was only one thing he really needed to understand. A wonderful, terrific man had fallen in love with her, and she desperately needed help to learn how to love him back. She asked if that was too much to ask. Mr. Rourke replied that when she saw Mr. Barkley, that would be a question that must be answered between the two of them. Wendy gasped, realizing what he was implying, and asked if Jeff was actually here on the island. Mr. Rourke smiled and revealed that as part of her fantasy, He had made special arrangements with Dream Vacations magazine to do a photographic layout of the island for its next issue, and he had arranged for Mr. Barclay to photograph it. Lawrence stepped in, adding that it would certainly upgrade the layout's importance considerably if a model of Miss Collins's renown were to be involved. Mr. Rourke played along playfully, asking Lawrence why he had not thought of that himself, calling it an excellent idea. Wendy smiled nervously, saying it was terrific but wondering how Jeff was going to react. Mr. Rourke suggested that she join him at the Twin Falls in half an hour by following the lane over there, and they would soon find out. Wendy agreed and began to walk down the path. Meanwhile, Arthur Crane and Joanne Fields were settling into their luxurious villa. Arthur was looking out the window, his expression shifting as if he were already imagining himself in another world. Mr. Rourke and Lawrence approached the villa, observing him from a distance. Mr. Rourke muttered that it was devastating indeed. He called out to Mr. Crane, hoping he was not disturbing anything. Arthur turned around, smiling warmly, and invited them to come on up. Lawrence looked at Arthur, admitting that he did not recognize him without his space helmet. Arthur laughed, asking if Lawrence had seen him on television. Lawrence confirmed that he had seen him as the astronaut, and also in certain newspapers and magazines as an artist, an author, and even a rock star. Arthur smiled brightly, admitting that he really had fun with the rock star persona. Mr. Rourke noted that he could easily imagine that, but added that he wished Joanne saw things the way Arthur did. Arthur's smile faded slightly as he confessed that every time he became somebody else, it just drove Joanne up a wall. Mr. Rourke explained that it did indicate a certain psychological imbalance. He noted that when a person feels insecure about himself, it is not uncommon to assume other personalities, ones which he considers more deserving of esteem and respect. Arthur sighed deeply, admitting that used to be him until he met Joanne, who made him feel truly good about himself. Yet, despite that, he still kept doing it and simply could not help himself. Mr. Rourke nodded compassionately, stating that he believed they might be able to help him. He turned to Lawrence and announced that for the next 2 days, he was entrusting Mr. Crane to Lawrence's personal care. Lawrence looked startled, pointing to himself and asking if he heard correctly. Mr. Rourke confirmed this, stating that during Mr. Crane's stay on the island, Lawrence was to be at his side whenever possible. If Lawrence saw him becoming one of his fictional personalities, his explicit task would be to stop him. Arthur looked at them, a bit daunted by the prospect of 2 days of just being himself. Mr. Rourke smiled encouragingly, saying he was quite confident Arthur would get through it. Arthur thanked him sincerely. After Arthur walked away, Lawrence looked at Mr. Rourke with a worried expression, muttering that Arthur might get through it, but questioning if he himself would survive the ordeal. Down by the scenic beach, Jeff Barclay was busy setting up his camera equipment. He was a handsome, focused man, deeply dedicated to his craft. He was playing a game of chess with a crew member named Mr. Lorch while waiting for the shoot to begin. Jeff moved a piece and confidently declared checkmate. Mr. Lorch smiled and conceded. Jeff then began discussing the schedule, noting that after they finished this fantasy layout, they had to do a Japanese setup and then a wedding fantasy. Mr. Rourke approached the set, commenting that in order not to disappoint the people who see the pictures, he thought that he had better do as well with his fantasies as Mr. Barclay seemed to be doing with theirs. Jeff smiled, looking out at the beautiful scenery, and told his assistant that it was about as close to paradise as they were going to get. A beautiful model in a swimsuit walked past, and Jeff called her his girl, instructing the crew to begin. He asked a crew member named Pete to remember that this shoot represented every man's fantasy. Jeff called for the 24mm lens and thanked the assistant. He encouraged the model to show him the magic, telling her to hit him in those drums, referring to the rhythm of her poses. He praised her movements, calling them nice and terrific. He told her to put her head back, capturing the perfect shot, and thanked her profusely. Jeff then called out to his assistants, Chris and Carla, telling them that they were done with Pete's segment and needed to set up for a woman's fantasy. He urged the models to get off the rocks carefully because they had another setup to prepare. As the crew moved around, Wendy Collins stepped onto the set, wearing a stunning outfit. Jeff froze, his smile disappearing instantly. He looked at her coldly and asked what she was doing here. Wendy replied quietly, reminding him that she worked for a living too. Mr. Rourke stepped in to smooth things over, apologizing to Mr. Barclay and mentioning that Miss Collins had generously consented to be one of their models for the layout. Jeff scoffed bitterly, asking Wendy if she had not hurt him enough already, and if she wanted to see if he had any more feelings left for her to kick around. Wendy pleaded with him, asking if they could at least be civil with each other. Jeff laughed hollowly, calling her an expert on human relations. He asked her directly if she was really going to stick around and ruin this job for him. Wendy's temper flared slightly, and she asked Jeff who in the hell he thought he was, pointing out that he was only the photographer. Jeff snapped back, saying he was not anymore. He turned to Mr. Rourke, stating that if he wanted Wendy for the shoot, that was fine, but he could shoot the layout himself because Jeff was quitting. Jeff stormed off the set, leaving a heavy silence behind. Wendy looked at Mr. Rourke, whispering that it looked like this was one fantasy that was over even before it had a chance to begin. Mr. Rourke looked at her with a calm, mysterious gaze, replying that it was not quite over yet. In another part of the island's resort, a young aspiring actress named Gloria was arguing loudly with her agent, Marty. They were sitting at an outdoor cafe. Gloria was complaining bitterly, stating that she had